Did you know that your FortiGate firewall can also be used as a load balancer in your network? Well, FortiGate has a ton of hidden features, and we're going to uncover all of them. Well, not all of them in this video, but we're going to cover all of them in the next videos as well. And if you're asking, what is a load balancer anyway? Why do I need it? No problem, that's what we're going to talk about. But to better explain, let's take a look at the lab topology for this video. Okay, this is the lab topology that we're going to use. So I have a couple of servers here connected to a switch, and this switch connects to a firewall, the FortiGate firewall, and I have a client PC that will access the resources or the application that are sitting in these web servers. Okay, and this is just a management interface that I use to access the firewall, so I can manage out of band. But more about that on another video. So essentially, I want you to imagine the following. So let's suppose that I have an application, for instance, a website like my website, www.silesiocarvalho.com. It is installed on one of these servers, okay? And I have one client that is accessing this website, okay? So how do we do that on a conventional or traditional way? So this server that is running with the IP 10.31.101.2 would be translated to a different IP on this section of the network. So for instance, we would translate it by using network address translation, and we would hide its internal IP, so to be exposed as, let's suppose, 172.20.120 and .2. So whenever the client wants to talk with server 2, he would actually try to reach 172.20.120.2. So it would be something like this. So HTTP column 172 1 no okay 20 120.2. okay, that would work. Okay, so far so good. What if we add an additional client? So what if instead of having just one client, we have two clients? Well, when those two clients access the same server, they would start, or they would share the resources on that server, okay? So if we add one additional client, they would still be sharing the same resources on that server. At some point in time, the user experience won't be so good. Essentially, we would have things like the website becoming slower, so some application might start to crash. So you probably had this experience already. So the solution that this company will have probably is to add an additional web server. Okay, no problem. So they add one additional web server, then the admin is going to make all the configuration in the network to expose that server with a different IP. Okay, so probably we would have the 172.20.120.3, and okay, we would have some clients accessing this server number 2, and other clients accessing the other server. But at some point in time, again, this server would also face some latency issues, some bad experience from the user, and we would add an additional web server, and you can see how this process goes. Okay, so what is an alternative or a better way of doing things? So the best way or an alternative is to use a load balancer. So load balancer, okay, or LB. So what is a load balancer? Why do we need a load balancer? Well, instead of exposing these three servers, okay, to the outside, to the internet, we could just have a device placed in between the client and the servers. So the clients would reach the server, and the server would be the one connecting to the servers. And I mean, the load balancer would be the one connecting to the servers. So this way, the load balancer, he can choose which traffic to send to which server. And this could vary according to the load balancing algorithm that we choose. For instance, we can say that every 2 packets sent to one server and then the third packet sent to the other server. Or we can use some feature to evaluate whether the server is available or is taking too much load, and if it's receiving too much load, then use the other server available in the server pool or in the server farm. So that would be the role of a load balancer. So we would distribute the traffic coming from the clients evenly to the servers. Okay, so far so good. So what if instead of using a load balancer, a device, we just use our firewall that also support this functionality? Well, that's where Fortigate comes in the picture, because let me delete this. Fortigate, it is a firewall device by default. So it's used to inspect traffic, so we can determine what do we want to get into the network, what do we want to allow to leave the network. And by enabling this feature, the load balancing feature, we get the best of both worlds. We get security because it is a firewall, and we have the load balancing features of a load balancer, which means that the client, they would reach a virtual server, okay, in the firewall, in the FortiGate, but this IP would be hiding the servers. So would be actually the firewall, okay, distributing all the connections coming from the clients evenly to all the servers, okay. So that's the beauty of using Fortigate as a load balancer. But how do we enable this in the first place? Now let's take a look at the Fortigate. I have my Fortigate admin page here, so let's get into Fortigate. And I don't want to set up this now, and I didn't make any major changes on the firewall so that we can walk together. So let's just take a look at what I have configured at the interfaces, so that you can replicate this scenario as well in your company or for POC or a lab. So this is port 2, so this is the one that is facing the servers, and it has the IP 1031.101.100. And I have my management port, the one I'm accessing this Fortigate, so it's kind of out of band management. And we have the one that is facing the clients, and that has the IP 172.20.120.122. And that's basically what I have on these interfaces. I don't have any routing, any state route or whatsoever. Just try to keep it as simple as possible. Now, if we look at the firewall policies, I don't have anything enabled yet, okay? So it's just blank, okay? Now, let's enable the load balancing feature. Well, remember what I said, it is hidden, kind of. Now we have to go to System, Feature Visibility, and here Additional Features, Load Balance. Okay, and then we click on Apply. Setting saved successfully. Sure. Now let's take a look at Policy and Objects. And now we have these two options, Virtual Servers and Health Check. So if we go to Virtual Servers, what is a virtual server? If we go back to our topology, we have the client, we have the firewall or the load balancer, and we have the servers. So a virtual server, it would be kind of a device that we are exposing on the WAN side or in the internet side. So that's, let's just use VS as the virtual server. So that would be a virtual IP that exists on this side of the network. Let's suppose we create a virtual server with IP 120, 120, 20, and 121. Okay, so this means that the clients, they would actually call this IP, and this IP would be referencing these real servers. Okay, let's see how to do that. You delete this and go back to Firewall, and let's create a new virtual server. So for name, we're going to call it as VS, because I want to expose an HTTP application. I'm just going to call VSS HTTP. Okay, so that's my virtual server for HTTP server. The type will be HTTP, and I want to tie this service to an interface, and I'll be using the WAN interface. Okay, so select WAN port 3. Now, what is going to be the virtual server IP? Now, I want to expose this, recall, on the WAN where the client is facing. So it's going to be 172.20.120, and I'm going to use 121. Okay, what's going to be the port? Because I'm using HTTP, and I'm just going to use port 80. Okay, now the load balance, what do we want to use? So we have a couple of options here, but we're just going to keep it simple. We're going to use the round robin load balance method or algorithm. So it means that for every packet that arrives on the virtual server will send to the first server available in the server farm, and the next packet that arrives from the client, the virtual server is going to send to the next server in the pool. Okay, so on, so forth. Okay, now persistence, should we enable or not? Now in this case, we're just going to leave as none. We're not using any health check, and health check allows the FortiGate to validate whether the server is alive or not. So every couple of seconds is going to validate, hey, are you there? Hey, are you there? Just the monitoring or keep alive, if you call. Now let's add the real servers. Okay, because this is just the virtual server, but now we have to say, okay, how this virtual server is connected to the real servers. So we go to real servers, and we're going to add the first one by using IP, and it's 1031.101.2. Let's just confirm that by looking at the diagram. 1031.101.2, yeah, 1031.101.2, and the port that is open on the server, and it has to be open. That's why it's great to use what do you call health check. Okay, so port 80 max connections. We're not going to limit this, and we're going to set the mode to active. Okay, I'm just going to copy this because we have 3 servers. Okay, let's create a new one, paste, change the IP to 3, the port is 80, and that's it. And we're going to add one more. We're going to paste, change to 4, and the port is 80, and we're going to press OK. Okay, we have our virtual server and we have the real servers. Now let's press OK and save this. Okay, so far so good. Recall that we are still using a firewall, so the firewall by default will deny all the traffic. So we have to allow this traffic from the clients to the virtual server. Okay, not to the real servers, but to the virtual server. So let's go to firewall policy, and we're going to create just one rule. So we'll click on new, and let's give it a name, permit, let's see, HTTP to virtual server. We only have one virtual server. Okay, now where will this traffic coming from? It will come from the client, so I have to select the incoming to be my WAN port. Okay, and the outgoing is going to be the LAN port. Now what is going to be the source? Do I know from which address will the clients come? No, I don't. So in this case, we're going to select O, and the destination we're going to set as the virtual server. But we can't find the virtual server, so we have to change the inspection mode from flow based to prox based. So we change to prox based, and now we get back to destination, and we should find our virtual server. Don't forget about that. You select the virtual server. Now for which service we want to allow this, HTTP. So we'll select HTTP and it's done. We want to keep net enabled, everything else as default, but there is something that I always like to enable, is to enable logging. Okay, just double check that everything is the way we want. So this is the root name, incoming interface 1, destination port 2, source all, destination is our VS, schedule always, the service HTTP, everything looks good. We press OK and cross fingers. Yes, awesome. Now before we make any test from the client, there is something that we have to make sure. Is the web application running on the servers? Okay, let's go to server number 2 and I'm going to log into my server and just want to confirm. So first, is the IP correct? 172, no, it's 10.31.1.1.2. Okay, that's okay. Now what about the web application? So one way to check is to run the command service apache to status. Okay, and you can see that it's not running, it's inactive. So if I try to access the default web page, this is also a way for you to validate before testing any further. Okay, and it's not going to work. Okay, I just want to show you this step because you might forget. At least I did. So it's not working because the Apache server, so that's the service responsible for running the web server role, it's not enabled. So we're going to enable it. So just type start, service Apache to start. Okay, now let's confirm whether it's really running, and it's running. Awesome. Okay, oh, now I have to go back. Yes, just cancel this and do it again, and we should see our default page, so the page that we want our clients to see. And why is it taking so long? Let's see, 172. No, it's 10.31.1.1.2. Okay, that's what we want. Okay, our web page is running. Let's do the same on server 3. Okay, so doing some tests there. Just going to check again. Apache, actually that's service Apache 2 status. Okay, it's running. Okay, just confirm that it's really running. Okay, it takes some time, and patient is not great quality. That's 10.31.1.1.3. Okay, it's running, and let's test now on server 4. Again, service Apache to status, it's running, and let's confirm. If you notice, server 3, they essentially have the same message except for the server ID. So it's going to be 10.31.101.4. okay, so this is just to show in which server is the request being sent to, so when you start testing from the client. Okay, so all of the servers are okay. Okay, now let's take a look at our client. Let's bring the client open and let's log in. Okay, now let's try to open the page. So that should be, recall the external IP or the virtual server IP is 172.20.120.121, and it's working. And look at this, we landed on server 3. So if I refresh the page, now it's sent to server 4. If I do it again, now it's server 2. And look at this, I have a typo there on server 2. Thank you for this, and I'm going to correct these real quick. And just have to edit many double and close. Okay, so back to clients, and you can see that it's now it's okay, they all look the same, that it's sending all the requests evenly at each time to one of the servers. So that's the role of a load balancer. And there are some benefits behind just load balancing. For instance, if we go to server 2, let me show you this, and okay, we are able to capture the session coming from the client. So this is the server IP and the port where it's listening to, and the source IP, it's actually from the firewall, not from the client. So the client IP is also being hidden on the from the server. Okay, well, what is great. And from the client perspective, it also doesn't know anything about the address space 1031 or 101. Okay, so that's the beauty of using a firewall and using the load balance functionality. If we want to check other logs as well, we could go on the firewall. Let me just close this and let's log in. And I want to skip it. And if we go to log and report forward traffic, you should see that traffic coming from our source. So this is the client IP address .16, that's into the virtual server IP 121, and we can see the rule that it's allowing this and how much traffic has been sent since it established the session. And we don't see anything related to the real server's IP. Okay, so if you want to get into more details about this functionality, you can take a look at the FortiOS documentation. So at virtual server load balance, you'll be able to see which protocols, which services you can use the load balance functionality, the different use cases, such as SSL loading, and so just some more detail in case you want to dive deeper into this topic. So I hope you found this video useful, and I hope to see you in the next one. Adios.